So before we jump into green schoolyards, I'd like to provide a brief history and overview of the Children in Nature Network. In 2006, author Richard Louv published his groundbreaking best-selling book, Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder, where he daylights the disappearance of the outdoor childhood and the rise correlationally in obesity, attention disorders, depression, and stress. Together with the great other thought leaders, Rich co-founded this organization to galvanize a global back to nature movement for children, families, and communities. The Children in Nature Network's mission is to increase equitable access to nature so that children and natural places can thrive. We want to connect children to nature in their everyday lives. With our Green Schoolyards initiative in particular, the Children in Nature Network is seeking to grow the number of green schoolyards across the U.S. that have natural elements, family engagement, and community access in order to expand healthy environments for low-income children and children in communities of color. These green schoolyards can benefit the entire community through improved community health, higher rates of community and family cohesion, and increased opportunities for outdoor play, learning, and restoration. Our vision is that all U.S. communities offer access to green schoolyards by 2050 to enhance children's healthy development, community well-being, and positive environmental impacts. So before we go any further, I wanted to put out what the Children in Nature Network defines as a green schoolyard, just so that we have a common understanding for the rest of the conversation today. So to the Children in Nature Network, green schoolyards are multifunctional school grounds designed for and by the entire school community, and they can include features such as outdoor classrooms, native and pollinator gardens, stormwater capture, traditional play equipment, nature play areas, edible gardens, trails, trees, and shrubs, and ideally they're available for the community to use as parks outside of school hours. And there is a range, I want to recognize that, of the ways that people define green schoolyards. And I think that that's both important and necessary as we really try to ensure that every community has a green schoolyard, that it's going to need to be locally relevant and community relevant, the definition of a green schoolyard. So what if all of our schoolyards are places for children and school staff to learn and play during the entire school day and used by the school community like a park outside after hours? Imagine how much different our cities and towns would look and feel for both children and adults, wildlife, and our waterways if every single schoolyard was a green schoolyard. To make this happen, the Children in Nature Network is doing several things, which we can tell you more in our follow-up email. But in particular, we're working with many partners, such as Real School Gardens and school districts across the country, to implement a National Green Schoolyards Action Agenda to accomplish that vision of 2050, ensuring access to all communities. So today we are focused on learning in a green schoolyard. And I'm really, really excited for you to hear from both Jeanne McCarty and Anna Dutke, who are going to be talking about different ways that school districts across the country are using their outdoor space, what features are incorporated, what kind of professional development is involved in both of their programs, from a national organization's perspective and how they're making that happen and scaling from that realm, and then from a specific school district's perspective, starting out with one nature-based preschool and really spreading that pedagogy throughout the school district. So I'm going to pass this off to Jeanne McCarty now, who is going to tell us about Real School Gardens.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much, Jamie, for the opportunity to share more about our organization, Real School Gardens, and our mission to inspire and support 15,000 teachers to use the outdoors as classrooms during the school day. I'm also happy to join you, Anna, as well in the webinar. Real School Gardens, what we do is we coach and we inspire teachers to use outdoor learning labs for the power of experiential learning. So we believe that outdoor experiential learning is a highly effective method of teaching, and we want to make sure that it's available for every child. So we have an ambitious goal to support teachers across the country in using the spaces. And by coaching and inspiring them, we are aiming to unlock student performance with the power of experiential learning. So to accomplish this, we do a couple of things. So first, we provide ongoing professional learning for teachers at our partner schools. And we also build easy-to-use outdoor learning labs that provide students with real-world connections to the curriculum. We recognize that not all schools have large spaces or wild spaces, so we work with schools to create spaces for them to interact with nature on the schoolyards, but also to be able to embed that learning into the curriculum. So I'd love to share a little bit more about our professional learning program. Our aim is not for teachers to simply teach outdoors, although there are so many benefits to that. I think it's great that, for kids to spend more time outdoors, there's certainly wonderful wellness benefits for spending time outside, but our aim is to help teachers use the outdoors to teach. So if teachers can effectively teach outdoors, we believe that it'll both increase the time students spend outside, but also increase student performance. And it's not always simple. Sometimes it requires a shift in teaching and in teacher practice. So the training we provide isn't a one and done training, and instead it's a year-long instructional coaching cycle where we model teach, we plan together with teachers, we observe teachers, and provide feedback and support. So our goal is that teachers become more effective educators. They're more effective experiential educators using the outdoors, and we focus specifically on two domains that do increase teacher effectiveness. One is self-directed learning, and the second is student engagement. So it's critical to the success of our model that we're developing lesson plans alongside teachers that are both relevant to the teachers and also easy to implement. So a couple of things are essential there, not only alignment with Common Core and or state standards, but we also align our training to whatever that local instructional scope and sequence is. And we also make sure that we're providing cross-curricular connections. So in addition to the training that we provide in person, we also have an online coaching center that supports our school partners and our teachers. And you'll see here that it's organized in a way that teachers can search it for what is relevant for them. They can search by grade level, they can search by the education standard, the subject, the theme, so they can pull up lesson plans that are relevant. So that's essentially our professional learning program. It's ongoing. We partner with schools with a kickoff for 2 years, but we also continue to work with them as we're as partners, so we can continue to increase the number of teachers that are using the outdoors to teach. In terms of the measures that we're seeking to accomplish, one is that effective teacher measure. So we really do want to know that our teachers that we're partnering with are more effective because they're using the outdoors to teach. We've seen teachers that go through our training program increase both their job satisfaction and their teacher effectiveness by 50%, and that's over a 3-year period. So it is that long-term training that's important. We've also seen the majority of our teachers, and really a high majority, reporting increases in student engagement because of our program. And it's that teacher effectiveness and student engagement that then increases academic achievement, which is, shows up in how they understand content knowledge and also perform as students. And again, it's that tangible measures that I think are important for school districts to see, for your principals to see, so that more teachers can teach outdoors. So the other piece of what we do is for the highest need schools, we build outdoor learning labs. And these are schools that wouldn't otherwise have a ready-to-use space for educating outdoors. This is just an example of how we would transform a schoolyard that's not used and that often has issues into a place for learning. Kids and teachers are involved in the process. Kids learn through the design process, but the most critical piece for us is engaging teachers, because this is going to become a learning space for them. So now I'd like to just talk about a few of the elements that we always include and how teaching works alongside that. Teachers are critical. Outdoor learning won't happen if teachers aren't kind of bought into the practice and also feel comfortable and confident. So we always make sure there are elements for teachers to actually feel like it's classroom space and not be discouraged to go outdoors. So what you'll see here is seating, shade, whiteboards so they can feel comfortable like they're in the classroom, a nice flow to the area, and just, things that mimic the indoor classroom for those teachers that might not typically go outside. Because again, if our goal is to engage a large number of teachers, we want to make sure that we're not just engaging those that are, the people that like to go outside, but just all teachers that could use the space for teaching and learning. When we talk about specific subjects, so science, for example, we want to look at how teachers can use the outdoors to unlock that potential in all students to learn. A lot of science is just based outdoors. So when we think of life science and earth science, there's so much opportunity for hands-on learning, for students to examine, observe, experiment, and explore. And so if you look at some of these elements, there are always curricular connections to plants. We also, on this slide, you'll see an insect hotel that we always partner with schools to create habitats for their schoolyards so students can study life cycles and just things that are in the curriculum there. We also work with teachers to overlay hard concepts. So one thing that might be difficult to see, but in that bottom right-hand corner, that is students that are learning food chain cycles. And so they're learning things indoors, going outdoors, and finding examples of those concepts on their schoolyards, and then mapping out those concepts in the real space that you see there. So they're looking for producers and consumers, and then taking photos and mapping it on their schoolyard. So it's that real world hands-on connection that helps students understand a concept that might be more difficult indoors. When you think about earth science, very similarly, these are just a few examples, but earth science is outdoors. So creating ways for students to study weather on their schoolyards, for them to observe and chart and graph, and then also come back and present the data, look at patterns. We tend to create for some of the schools that request them features that students can manipulate. So you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner again, an earth science station. You'll also see above that an erosion table. So these are places that kids can do experiments and look at sedimentation, erosion, look at what happens with different kinds of rocks in that real world setting. And then if you look to the left, that's another example of students that are mapping energy on the schoolyard. So taking that concept from the indoors to the outdoors and understanding it in that real world space. So math is also a great subject to take outdoors, and very simply, math outdoors, it has meaning and purpose, and it's also tangible and concrete. So there are a lot of project-based examples that teachers use where they may be looking at kind of how to amend their vegetable beds and using math to calculate what they need to do, and it gives that meaning and purpose to math. We have a lesson that we train teachers on to teach the concept of angles, using the angles of the sun in the real world setting with the problem of installing solar panels. Measurement, estimation, these are all great examples where kids that may struggle indoors can go outdoors and have that tangible and very concrete way to practice math. And then language arts, that another great tons of examples of what you can do in a schoolyard there from just that real world informational text. So if you think about seed packets, scientific text, taking that outdoors and actually applying it in an outdoor classroom. The outdoors is a wonderful inspiration for writing that is, it creates a common space that everyone can access. So rather than writing about things that kids may experience a lot differently, you can go outdoors and have kids find things to write about that inspire them on their schoolyard. And then descriptive writing, teaching simile and metaphor outdoors. You have just a wealth of tools at your fingertips that, again, can inspire kids to learn things like that. And then I included just fun elements, like some of our schools will create things like alphabet trees or poetry trees, and just another wonderful way to kind of bring that learning to life outdoors and be outdoors. There are other learning opportunities that are accessible in outdoor classroom: environmental literacy and sustainability, looking at waste management through composting, water conservation, setting up experiments in that upper right-hand corner. That is a compost experiment, looking at different materials and how long they take to break down outdoors, and using things like rain gardens and rainwater catchment. Nutrition as well. So you'll see some of our schools build farmers market areas where they have scales and identification boards and areas that kids can also be entrepreneurs. So that is just, it's just a tip of the iceberg of things that teachers are doing and can do outside, because using the outdoors to teach is just an effective tool for academic success. It's highly engaging. It promotes much deeper learning for students and learning that they can apply in all kinds of situations. Our goal is to make sure that all students have this solid foundation for success, and they also can have this connection to the natural world around them by moving the class outdoors. Most schools have some outdoor space, but you can't just open the doors and it happens. We really need to think hard about how we can provide tools and support for teachers to then take that leap and harness the power of learning outdoors.
Thanks so much, Jeanne, for sharing more about Real School Gardens. Got a little bit of background sound there. And there's actually quite a few questions came through, and so I know you all have a lot more questions, detailed as well as bigger picture for Jeanne after Anna does her presentation. So now we're going to hear from Anna Dutke, who is again from the Prior Lake Savage School District in Minnesota, and we're going to hear about the work that's happening to support nature-based education there. Anna?
Thank you, Jamie. I'm very excited about the opportunity to share about the experiences doing outdoor learning with my students. As she mentioned, I'm a nature preschool teacher, and it's a public school district that's just south of St. Paul, Minneapolis. And I developed the nature preschool program in 2014, and then tomorrow we will be officially completing our 4th school year. Prior Lake Savage Area Schools is an E-STEM district with the first E standing for environmental education. We believe the outdoor environment provides the perfect context for integrating STEM, which is often done through hands-on learning opportunities in our schoolyards. Environmental education became a key feature of the school district when it partnered with the Jeffers Foundation starting in 2005. This partnership resulted in funding for the district naturalist position, a professional development in environmental education for teachers, as well as many resources. While the grant funding is no longer part of this partnership, the Jeffers Foundation continues to provide support for new teachers in terms of professional development and curriculum resources. Prior Lake Savage Area Schools has also been recognized on the national level through the U.S. Department of Education's Green Ribbon School Program. It was named a Green Ribbon Sustainability District in 2013, and then 5 of our elementary schools have received the U.S. Department of Education's Green Ribbon School Award status. These achievements are a testament to environmental education being a priority for the school district, and as you can see here, it is even embedded into our district strategic plan. So what does environmental education in Prior Lake Savage Area Schools look like? While there are some variations between individual classrooms and buildings, there are several key consistent components across the district. One of these is our annual E-STEM Day, which is a day of outdoor learning where teachers, naturalists, and community experts integrate environmental education lessons with STEM-based skills and concepts. We have a district curriculum committee, which has identified several replacement lessons for teachers to utilize that cover the same skills and concepts as the textbook lessons, only they incorporate hands-on outdoor learning in the schoolyard. And those are ready-made for the teachers to take and utilize with their students. We're also fortunate to have a district naturalist that supports teachers in early childhood through 12th grade in incorporating environmental education opportunities in our classrooms. And then teachers have a variety of resources and supplies in all the schools. This includes things like biofacts such as skulls and pelts, animal tracks, insect nets, pond dipping supplies, snowshoes, binoculars, and etc. that they can take every day with their students. So being this is a webinar about green schoolyards, you're likely curious about what our outdoor learning spaces look like. With 10 schools in the district, the outdoor learning spaces differ in terms of access to wild or natural spaces. They can vary from having a small courtyard garden to access to 80 acres of natural space. Before sharing 3 examples from our schools, I wanted to mention something that I think is important to consider when discussing outdoor learning in schoolyards. And that's our mindset of how we view or what we view as being nature. Emma Maris gave a TED Talk that I think is highly recommended for teachers to watch as it addresses this very issue. We need to remember that nature is everywhere and to focus not on what we don't have access to in our schoolyards, but instead on our schoolyard's potential as an outdoor learning space. I also encourage you to look beyond your school property and consider spaces that are within walking distance, such as public parks or private property that you might be able to gain access to through partnerships, to gain access to some of those wild and natural spaces that might not exist within the school property. The first school here that I'm going to highlight is Edgewood School. This school has been the most limited space of all the schools due to being located on a property with another elementary school. This is also where I taught the pilot year of nature preschool, and I still recall the question of, how are you going to do nature preschool here? There isn't any nature. While there is definitely plenty of plants and animals for the students to discover and investigate, one thing that was missing from this space was the natural materials for the children to interact with. So in preparation for our first year of nature preschool, I turned an existing butterfly garden that you can see in the courtyard center there into a nature classroom. I collected sticks and logs for building forts and balancing. I shopped Craigslist for free materials left over from summer landscaping projects, such as rocks and pavers, and we used those for things like loose parts for building, stepping stones through the garden, to outline the digging area, and to create a small platform to serve as tables or stages, depending on this children's interests. I had contacted a local tree company, Collins Tree Care, for tree stumps, and that created a space for our morning meeting. And then I received funding from our Early Learning Advisory Council to create mud kitchen tables, as well as buy a pitcher pump to create a water source in the nature classroom. The students in our 4-day and 5-day-a-week nature preschool program never grew tired of the space or the materials, as the natural changes that occurred throughout the seasons provided enough new excitement to keep their interest and curiosity all year long. Redtail Ridge is an elementary school that has incorporated a nature classroom similar to that of Edgewood with the mud kitchen table there you can see, and a morning meeting spot with the tree stumps. But one thing that's unique to their school is their school garden. So if school gardens are something that interests you, I encourage you to learn more about their garden by viewing the link that's listed on this slide. Jeffers Pond Elementary is where I currently teach, and it's adjacent to 80 acres of land that was donated to the City of Prior Lake by the Jeffers Foundation, and it was designated to be used by the school for environmental education purposes. It includes a stream, a forest, and 2 ponds, and as you can imagine, an abundance of wildlife. So now that you know a little bit about our outdoor spaces, I'm going to touch base briefly about our nature preschool program. It started in 2014 with 2 half-day sections and has since grown due to the interest from families. We are now offering a variety of options for families to choose from, including both half-day and full-day, as well as options for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. In our nature preschool program, it is ultimately the interests and experiences of the students that drive the curriculum. The teachers utilize these experiences to integrate opportunities for the students to practice skills and concepts identified by the Minnesota Department of Education's Early Learning Standards. The students, in their experiences outside, learn to observe, ask questions, and share their ideas and theories about their experiences and discoveries. And then it's through the hands-on and inquiry-based learning that students continue to expand on their knowledge and understanding of topics throughout the year. And a lot of these topics are reoccurring, that things that they experience in the fall might kind of disappear with the winter season and then come back in the spring. And so we continue to revisit that and build on our knowledge. We believe these learning experiences are important for the student's future in education, as a positive first experience with school and learning will set the foundation for becoming a lifelong learner. The program also provides a lifelong benefit for the students as they develop a sense of place or a sense of belonging to the natural area and a respect for the natural environment. And they start to view themselves as truly part of nature and not something that they're separate from. So now to address the elephant in the room, yes, these students live in Minnesota, and yes, it does get cold here. In Nature Preschool, we truly embrace the philosophy of there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. In Prior Lake Savage Area schools, we do go outside unless it is lightning or the temperatures or wind chill falls below -5 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're able to do that by setting up the groundwork from the beginning when working with families and educating them about appropriate clothing, and then having resources at school as well for if students do arrive and they don't have the right clothes, that they can be comfortable when they're outside. Moving from the early childhood building Edgewood School to an elementary school has allowed me for the opportunity to collaborate with my colleagues in K through 5th grade. Collaboration allows for teachers to work together to overcome any barriers and support one another with getting students outside. As a result of this collaboration amongst teachers in Prior Lake Savage Area schools, outdoor learning continues to become more common beyond the initial environmental education replacement lessons that are part of the curriculum. Many teachers now, K through 5th grade, are incorporating it more regularly into their schedule, and many are doing so daily. Through collaboration, teachers share resources, lesson ideas, and even discoveries and observations their students are making in the schoolyards. When teachers share about these positive experiences their students had, it is contagious and provides other teachers with just the right motivation to head outdoors with their class. An example of the positive impact this can have is now seen as our students move from nature preschool into kindergarten. Many families are excited to learn that outdoor learning opportunities continue to be part of the daily schedule, rain or shine. Experienced teachers are also continuing to challenge one another to try something new and to take their outdoor learning to the next level. My colleague, Ann Nelson, a 5th grade teacher here at Jeffers Pond, did exactly that. It started with preschool students and 5th graders meeting sporadically throughout the year to do lessons or an activity outside, but has since grown to students meeting weekly and the lessons integrating 5th grade standards with outdoor learning. You can see an example of one of these lessons that we did on this slide here, which was an animal adaptation lesson. The benefits for both groups of the students has exceeded our expectations and has left both of us as teachers energized and excited to spend our summer planning new ways to do even more next year. I wanted to wrap up here with just a few tips and suggestions for moving forward with outdoor learning in your schools. One is to remember that outdoor classroom is similar to an indoor one and to treat it as such. So take time to teach and establish your routines and expectations for your time outside. It's easy to want to jump right in, but taking time to do this will help ensure success in outdoor learning with your students throughout the entire school year. I also encourage you to work together to develop common expectations with others that share the space. As your students move through the grade levels, this consistency will help make teaching and establishing the routines and expectations in the fall so much easier. And ultimately, it will allow for more time for learning as the students will learn those expectations, and then we'll continue on having the same ones as they move through 5th grade. And then when it comes time to establishing those routines and expectations, to make sure to conducting a risk-benefit analysis is part of the process. While we have a model for nature play being that it should be as safe as necessary and not necessarily as safe as possible, it's when teachers and students are not taking into consideration potential risks of participating in outdoor activities that heightens the risk of injury from occurring. Nature doesn't come with warning disclaimers such as signs on plants warning students that if they touch it, they'll itch, or if you choose to move a heavy rock, you're at risk for dropping it on your foot and potentially causing an injury. But by going through the risk and benefit analysis process and teaching your students how to assess for potential risks themselves, you are also teaching an important life skill that will likely lead to them being less reliant on needing those disclaimers to safely participate in the common day-to-day activities, such as consuming hot beverages. And then finally, I think an important piece too is to share your experiences. As I mentioned earlier about the impact collaboration can have on influencing outdoor learning in schools, it all began with taking time to share the stories about the benefits my students were experiencing in their classrooms. And then now, as it continues to grow, colleagues are sharing their own stories, and more teachers are jumping on board. And as you're not only sharing with your colleagues, but make sure you're sharing with your administrators, families, and the community members so they can see what's happening in the schools. And then one thing that with green schoolyards is that it can be overwhelming to take care of and maintain the spaces. So to make sure you are utilizing your different groups in your community, whether it's students, families, and community members, to help share that workload. And by sharing those stories about the benefits that students are having outside, I suspect it'll be more likely you'll get support from community members wanting to help maintain those spaces for you. And then when you're ready, let nature do the teaching. You can kind of move beyond those curriculum materials that are pre-made through Project Learning Tree and Project Wild, and really let the students' experiences and discoveries drive the learning that happens. You can follow our adventures. There's my information here. We're on Twitter. We like to share in our Nature Pre-K program. So I invite you to check that out, as well as our Facebook page for Jeffers Pond Nature Pre-K.
Hi, so I'm sorry, this was supposed to be, it looks like the discussion is after the thank you slide. So Anna and Jeanne, thank you so much for both of that. So there's been a lot of questions coming in, and I think what having the two of you join us today really helps spread there's a really large spread of what you're covering. There are urban districts primarily is who Real School Gardens works with, and Prior Lake Savage is a suburban/rural school district. And so seeing this difference, I think, is really helpful for everyone involved. You kind of picture yourself in there, or everyone on the webinar, you can picture yourself there. And also we covered primarily pre-K and elementary. And so there's been some questions about 0 to 3 as well as high school age students. So I'll get back to that. So I want to, I think, address some questions to Jeanne first. It was easier to keep track of those, and I'll send or share questions with both you and Anna. Some of the questions that were coming up were super specific about items in your outdoor classroom spaces, as well as how the program runs. So the first one that came up was, do you model, do your teachers, your training teachers model in front of students, or are they modeling in front of other teachers? I think that was the way the question was being asked.
Great. Thanks for the question. So we hire instructional coaches that are classroom teachers. So they've come from mostly large urban districts and have a significant history of using the outdoors to teach. So our instructional coaching cycle includes modeling, where they are modeling with the teacher, with the students present and during the school day. So it's seamless. They don't have to step out, stay after school. They don't have to go to an additional training, but we do it with the students present as part of the school day. And we do that also because we're modeling classroom management techniques as well, and showing them some kind of tried and true ways that they can keep their class engaged, excited, and well managed in the outdoor setting. But our cycle also has, we observe teachers and give them feedback as well, and we plan together. So we're not giving them, a book of lesson plans, but rather helping them embed outdoor learning in the framework that they're currently using. So it's model, observe, and then plan together. And our coaching cycles last a year, so it really is that time to help teachers shift their teaching practice.
Thanks, Jean. Hopefully that answered that question. So another question that came up from a few people was, how do the whiteboards hold up outdoors, and do they need to be replaced regularly?
Great question. So we have not yet replaced a whiteboard, and we've probably been using the whiteboards we're using now for about 6 years. We build them ourselves, so we've just tested different materials out. So I think we've kind of got it down with the things that are lasting. And you know, they're working for us. So I wish I had the information available, but maybe I can figure out a way to share with the attendees kind of what materials we use to put together and build for those whiteboards.
If you feel like you're able to share that later, you can go ahead and send me that link, and I can send that with the in the follow-up with the webinar recording.
Great. So, and it'll be a couple of materials as we put together. You know, we buy everything separately and then have someone kind of come in and construct it.
Awesome. There are two other questions that are related. One being how do we apply for a Real School Gardens partnership, and what does that cost? And does Real School Gardens partner with private, nonprofit, or early childhood programs, or only school districts? Just so you have them both in front of you. I copied both of these in the presenter chat, Jean, as you're responding.
Great. So right now we are working in 5 states in the District of Columbia. So we focus heavily in Maryland, Virginia, DC, Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas. We do have some partnerships available. It's a limited number for schools that are in other places across the country. And so if you're interested, I included an info email. Please just send me your information. I can let you know there are a couple of other regions that we've been looking at and starting some conversations in. So I can let you know if our in-person training is available to you. We also have resources on and I'll send you this link, Jamie, too, but our coaching center has some resources that you can get to without logging in. And we have a very active Facebook page where we share resources, daily too, that are helpful for teachers. We do, we're a nonprofit, so we raise money through corporate support and philanthropic support. And then all of our schools do invest in the partnership as well. And so, it ranges depending on what kind of professional learning program that we're putting together for the school, because we customize that as well in terms of the number of teachers. But it's along the lines of what principals are accustomed to funding for professional learning.
Great. So I have a couple of questions now, specifically for Anna, and then some that will be for both of you. So Anna, several people are interested in case-making tools, or the journey of how the Prior Lake Savage School District decided or was able to get to a point where in your strategic plan that nature-based education is an essential tenant. So how did that happen, if you are able to tell that story, and if you have any tools that might be able to support other people to advocate for that?
Sure. I think what happened kind of originally originated with access to the outdoor learning spaces in some of our schools. So teachers were naturally starting to utilize those spaces. And then with the Jeffers Foundation partnership, they kind of worked with the school district and worked together to kind of come up with that partnership and kind of brought that grant funding forward, which is really what kind of got it kicked off the ground. But as Jeannie kind of shared, there's a lot of research out there supporting the benefits of outdoor learning for students, both kind of the mental benefits and physical benefits, but also the academic benefits. And so in a public school district, that's kind of a top priority is educating students. So when you have the research starting to back that and support that, that goes a long way. And I think the biggest thing that I've experienced, and I know my colleagues have experienced, is student engagement. Learning can't happen if students aren't engaged. So when you find that magic environment where you have students that are engaged and excited about learning, they're really able to grasp and go off the ground with gaining their skills and concepts that they need to learn. So I think that's a big thing, that if you kind of ground yourself in what the research best practices are showing about what we know about how students learn and what they need to learn, and then see how that outdoor learning fits in that. And there's a lot of research coming out through the Children in Nature Network website has that, and the research library, where you can really start to see how that all fits in and then use that to make the case.
Awesome, thank you. And we also have the Children in Nature Network. One of the resources that we're going to be developing this summer is an educator advocacy toolkit for green schoolyards. It is for green schoolyards as a whole, but if you are interested in participating in some sounding and a focus group of what you feel like you would need to be able to make the green schoolyard specific case, please send me an email, which is Jaime, but Jaime, Jaime at childreninnature.org, and it'll also be in our closing slide. We'd love any additional interest to help support building that toolkit. So Anna, there's a couple of more questions around training and your own background. So the question, there's one question of, were you a naturalist first that learned early childhood practices, or an ECE educator that learned about EE? And I think it could be connected well. Do you know any training or certification programs specifically around, I'm assuming that this question is specific about nature-based childhood, so any certifications that you know of?
Sure. So my background, I graduated with a bachelor's in biology, and I was an educator for the Como Park Zoo. So I was an informal educator doing school and group programs and summer camps. And through that, I kind of realized my passion was early childhood education, and I was looking forward to having the opportunity to work with a group of students throughout the entire school year. And in addition to working for Como Park, I also did an internship at a nature center. So I got a little bit of a naturalist experience through that. And so I went back to school while I continued working at the zoo and got my early childhood education license. But one thing that when kind of talking about outdoor learning, I like to emphasize that you don't need to be an expert in the outdoor environment and the things that you might encounter with your students. In our program and the nature-based program, and I know a lot of teachers in K through 5th grade as well are adopting this approach too, where the teachers are really learners alongside the students. So it's an inquiry-based model where it's the questions and observations and experiences that are doing the teaching. And so as students have more experiences and they encounter things outside, they are motivated to learn more about it. So then they'll kind of gravitate towards doing research in books, asking around, having conversations with one another. And through those discussions and that research, then they're able to reach conclusions about the things that they're finding. So I think one of the things is not to get hung up if you're interested in this. If you don't have that naturalist background, don't let that stop you from getting outside with your students. As for specific types of programs, so there is an organization called Natural Start Alliance, and they are, I believe, currently compiling information in the United States and kind of gathering what programs exist that are supportive, specific to nature-based early childhood. But there are a lot of programs throughout the United States and different programs. It might just be a course here or there as part of the early childhood. But a lot of different colleges and universities are starting to offer nature-based classes for educators.
Thanks, Anna. Jeanne, I probably should have asked this question of you as well. What are some of the tips and tricks you either use or you would have for anybody on this webinar to talk with their school district or their own principal about how to incorporate outdoor learning or green schoolyard elements into their district?
So I think that it's really important to understand the goals of the person that you're speaking with. So for schools and districts, so principals and your school district leaders are motivated by knowing that students are going to be successful and that their teachers are going to be effective. So really, speaking more to how, how the work can help districts accomplish their goals. I also think that it's important to address their fears. I think that all principals and district leaders, it's always about kind of time and resource and ease of implementation. And so, make sure that what you're presenting is something that honors the limited time and resources that they may have, or helps them kind of think through how they can make it happen. And then with teachers, I think I saw a question too about, teachers that might not be outdoorsy. I think what I see with the majority of teachers that we encounter just across the country is that teachers want to be effective. And so, framing the work in ways that it's simple and relevant and something they can implement right away. I mean, that's what we talk about in training. Like, you don't have to be a gardener. You don't have to, have this as your hobby on the weekend. Like, this is all about really good teaching. And then, just make sure that what you're working on, they can have an ease of implementation right away, because teachers also have that limited time, limited resource, and then they're pushed hard towards specific goals. So, that's the advice I would give, because I do think, I just feel so strongly that our kids learn so much better when it's in the real world setting and they're able to do things in a hands-on way. And so, but not everybody's there. So I think it's figuring out how to communicate it in a way that illustrates the benefits to what their specific goals are.
So this question can be for either Jeanne or Anna, thinking about how parents or PTA associations, parent-teacher associations, might be able to support the development of an outdoor classroom at their school. Do you have either of you have any suggestions of good ways to broach that conversation?
Yeah, so at Edgewood School, it was the Early Learning Advisory Council, which is our equivalent of the PTA, that funded some components of that space. I think they are definitely a great resource because they can do some of those fundraising. A lot of what we utilized at Edgewood, one of the benefits of that space was we created an outdoor classroom for about $250. And that was just the materials, the high quality materials for the mud kitchen tables that would last for a long time. And then as well as the water pitcher pump. But everything else we were able to get for free from donations, like I mentioned, on searching on Craigslist from people's landscaping projects or people's backyards for the logs. And then the Collins Tree Care gave us those tree stumps. So to kind of be creative about that. And a lot of times it's not necessarily less is more, but a lot of natural materials are free. And then to think about that too, so not to get too overwhelmed by the cost aspect, at least as a starting grounds. And then as you move more to a well-established, then utilizing more funding would kind of be needed for that. But one other thing that our PTC here at Jeffers Pond has done that I think is wonderful is they have, we've got a dogs group, Dads of Great Students, and they've been creating rain boot racks for school teachers so that they have a place to store their outdoor gear. And I think that's a big piece, and kind of been talking about those non-outdoorsy teachers. One of the big pieces in success for outdoor learning is that people need to be comfortable. In order to enjoy your time outside, you have to be comfortable with the different weather. So in Minnesota, we do have the different seasons, so that requires a lot of gear. And I realize in different parts of the United States, that'll look a little bit different. But the other thing is that people don't necessarily know how to dress appropriately for outside. And this includes teachers and adults and staff, as well as the students. So keeping that in mind too, as part of the education piece, as you're moving outdoor learning into your schools, and making sure that there's extra gear available when people don't have that gear. So that's another great resource for the PTC to fund some of those things, to get extra rain boots, extra rain suits, snow pants, gloves, hats, and things like that to have on hand for those students that might not have it that day.
Thanks. Jeanne, did you want to add anything?
Sure. I mean, I think Anna spoke really well to the partnerships with PTAs and the incredible resources that they can provide. I also think they can play a role in advocating with the principal and the leadership of the school. And in doing that, I mean, I think it's really important as much as possible to bring that principal along with the PTA. So, we've often seen our schools that have the strong PTA partner help us, really make sure that what's going to happen will be one of the priorities for the principal as well. And then I think they're great participants. Like at some of our partner schools, PTAs are involved in the design, they're involved in the build, they're amazingly involved in kind of helping keep the maintenance plans together. One of my favorite stories just recently, we just built an incredible outdoor learning lab at a Baltimore City school that's just right there on kind of in the city. And the next week, our one of our staff was there speaking with the principal. And when he walked up, there were parents that were just sitting in the garden talking and just being together. And the principal said, I have not seen the parents of this school yet. So, I think it's great to just for that parent participation.
Awesome. So I think that we probably have time for one more question, and I'm kind of torn around how you support the non-traditionally outdoorsy folks, whether it's teachers or parents or community members, in wrapping their heads around using and supporting the outdoor learning curriculum at the schools that either through Real School Gardens as a whole or at Prior Lake Savage, if you have any tips. But then also there's a question around what about high schoolers? So I want to, if we can get to the high schoolers, that would be great. But do you have any tips for experiences, resources, techniques for teachers, community members, and families to get them on board?
Yeah, for kind of as an educator myself, one of the main things that educators can do is to kind of offer to co-teach and collaborate with those classrooms. So a lot of times we'll join up with another classroom that's a little bit unsure. And a lot of our kindergarten teachers, I did that last year, and would go out with them and kind of model a lesson so they could see what that looked like and help them with setting the expectations and the routines for their students. So I think one of the big pieces is that educators should be supporting other educators. So reaching out to those that are a little bit hesitant and being able to be right there. We all have different strengths. Some people might not like the technology initiatives or aren't well versed in how to use the iPads. So reaching out and offering support to those teachers and offering your skill sets, I think goes a far way. So I think that's a big encouragement. Mandating something and kind of making everybody do it isn't going to make teachers like the experience. So the main thing I think is to introduce it to them in a way that they can really see and experience the positive benefits firsthand. And that's going to be making them more likely to want to do that again and do it more. As for families, I think a lot of it goes back to their comfort level with it. So they may not have now been growing up with an experience of being outside. I had that as a child, but I know that's starting to shift with people's own individual experiences with outdoor learning. So I think that going back to the groundwork, we tell our families up front what types of activities students will be engaging with outside. If there's a fear about injury, we talk about how we go through that process with the students so they know exactly what to expect and what things that we're doing as teachers and staff to keep their students safe. And making sure that they have a positive learning experience outside. So I think the more you can communicate with families about what this looks like and the more specific details you can provide is going to help bridge that. And then, of course, opening your classroom door to invite families to join you in outdoor adventures goes a far way as well. So really sharing those stories and letting people see what that looks like will help overcome those barriers.
Jamie, I think Anna answered that very well. So, just really starting where people are, and kind of walking them along and not expecting them to make just a huge leap so quickly.
Thanks. There was another question about real school gardens in Canada. Um, and I know that Jean can respond to that as well, of whether or not they're thinking about working in Canada. But you do actually have a wonderful organization in Canada called Evergreen, which has such amazing resources and does support outdoor learning, both through lessons and trainings and garden design. Through in Canada. But Jean, I don't want to presuppose that you have no plans for Canada.
Well, not at the moment, but I would second the recommendation for Evergreen, and also, encourage you to join our Facebook page and our online coaching center for the support that we can give you in that way.
Jean, Anna, thank you both so much for joining us today. I think no matter unless folks were totally infant-based, which we did have a couple of questions there, but I didn't think that we could answer them. And I will follow up some with some resources there with the Natural Start Alliance. But I think you both covered a great spectrum of where people are coming in to thinking about outdoor classrooms, whether it's urban or rural or suburban, like I said, as well as covering the age. A large age range. So thank you both very much for your time and for being willing to respond to our attendees' interests from our last webinar series. Again, for everyone, we did record the webinar, and which will include both the audio and the slides. And so we'll share that with you. And through an email, so everyone who registered, including folks who aren't even on, will get access to the registration. The recording, and it'll happen probably sometime. Give us a few days because it takes a little while to get the recording totally up. We'll send you also links to social and web links to both Real School Gardens and Prior Lake Savage School District that both Jean and Anna shared, and then some additional things that came up even in the chat. So Jean, Anna, do you want to say anything else before we head out?
Well, just thanks everybody for coming. It's so great to hear just so much enthusiasm around this work from across North America. So I appreciate everyone joining us, and best of luck.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity. Like Jean said, I'm very energized by the interest and excitement about outdoor learning in schools, and I'm looking forward to hearing the stories as people are starting to take their classes outside.
Great, thank you both. And for all of you, be on the lookout for our next webinar series. It'll be in 3 months. Oh, we even have someone from Brazil, Doug. So thank you for joining us from wherever you're joining us. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take care.